This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Pension and benefit reform, the state of the Memphis airport, and more tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. We're joined tonight by a number of people to speak about the state of the airport. Later, we will be joined by some folks talking about pension reform and local government. But let me first introduce Kemp Conrad, Memphis City Council. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Charlie Goforth from the Memphis Chamber and the Aerotropolis Initiative. Thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
Jack Sammons, Chairman of the Airport Authority. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here, Eric. Thank you.
And Bill Dree, Senior Reporter with the Memphis Daily News. Let's start with, there are lots to talk about with the airport. I'm going to put you on the spot, Jack. You're relatively new into the chairman job.
Right.
The big headline has been for, what, a year and a half now, the decreased air traffic, especially from
Right.
Delta.
Right.
Do you have any sense of how much farther that's going to fall before it bottoms out, or is it just going to keep falling?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you who's going to win the NCAA either, but I think we're approaching sort of a leveling off. I actually have a meeting next week with the CEO of Delta Airlines to discuss Memphis' future, just he and I. Headed down to Atlanta. But the domestic airline business in America has been contracting for some time. The legacy carriers are focusing on the international trade going across the ponds in the Atlantic and Pacific. The low-cost carriers, on the other hand, Southwest, Allegiant, Spirit, and those type of airlines that tend to focus on fares have had explosive growth in the last decade since 9/11. As one door closes, another door opens. We've been a primary hub for Delta and Northwest before that, and Republic before that, for a generation. The world is changing, and our airport is in the middle of that dynamic. So it's allowed us an opportunity to attract companies like Southwest, which is coming here August the 11th.
And we'll come back to Southwest, because
Sure.
obviously that's real good news, and people have asked for that as
Right.
long as I've been in Memphis,
Yeah.
15, 20 years now.
Sure.
But on the Delta front, there, people really visceral reactions to Delta.
Right.
You
Sure.
know, be it the businesses who are paying $800 for
Right.
flights, or a family who wants to go see a loved one and they're paying these what they feel like are ridiculous fees.
Right.
And you hear people saying Delta's out to get Memphis. Delta doesn't like Memphis. Delta moved Pinnacle in that bankruptcy situation,
Yeah.
the subsidiary regional airline, out of Memphis. Is that your experience in terms of dealing with executives at Delta, that they
No.
don't care about
Yeah,
Memphis?
no, not at all. I mean, at the end of the day, in my company, we say we are not a not-for-profit company intentionally, and Delta is a for-profit public company that's responsible to their shareholders. And when the economy collapsed in 2008, all the airlines had to reflect as they were bleeding money left and right, and they tend to run back to their primary hubs. FedEx does the same thing when markets shrink. They might reduce Greensboro and Indianapolis and other hubs that they have. So there are a number of victims along the line, like St. Louis, Pittsburgh, could be Phoenix coming with the U.S. Air American merger.
Cincinnati got hit pretty hard, I
Cincinnati
believe.
got
Yeah.
clobbered. They went from 600 flights a day to less than what we have in Memphis
Right.
today.
And Nashville went through, people will say, Nashville went through it 10 years
Nashville
ago
went-
when American
left. American
Right.
used to have daily flights to London.
Yeah.
All that left overnight, and they had a brand new airport that was empty. But they've come back with Southwest and others,
Yeah.
and that's what we'll do.
You mentioned Southwest again. Just they've
Sure.
introduced. So for people who aren't familiar, AirTran bought by Southwest. They're rebranding, I think, in the
Right.
fall, bit by bit, sort of
Well,
city by
they're in the
city.
middle of that now. They're
Yeah.
painting airplanes as fast as they
right.
can, and they have leased their 717s, their smaller jets, to Delta, and Delta will replace the CRJs, which is the 50-seat beer can, I call it.
Right.
You're sitting there like this.
Right.
The regional jets. You don't have enough seats to spread that fuel cost over to make those things efficient. So they're going to be sent to the desert or converted to private jets. Southwest, the beauty of their model is they fly one airplane, the Boeing 737. Now, there are different models of it. that
Right.
gets larger. But the 717s that the AirTran is typically flown will be out of here probably
Right.
in the next 6 months, and you'll see the Southwest. The bad news is there's no first class on Southwest. There is on AirTran.
Right, right. And any sense of how quickly, or if at all, that Southwest will ramp up service here? I mean, again, there's a lot of folks who are sort of chomping at the
Yeah.
bit that they will come in with reasonable fares and relatively extensive service. Do you have a sense of how quickly it might ramp up?
I do. Their CEO told me rather abruptly one night at dinner, he said, the more you take, the more you'll get. And so it's all about whether or not this community, one, enrolls in their Rapid Rewards program, which is their frequent flyer,
Okay.
and their Chase Bank Visa card, which is an important revenue producer for them.
Right.
Everybody in Memphis has got a Delta Amex, and now we need
Right.
keep your Amex,
Right.
but get you a Visa card
Right.
from Chase with Southwest
Right.
brand on.
We've never mentioned so many credit cards on the show. This is a watershed moment. Bill Drees.
Let's talk about something that is not strictly the airport, the Aerotropolis conference, or concept, I should say. The city council got a look at where that plan is going in terms of formulation this week, and it got kind of a mixed reception from the council. So where do you think we are on putting some specifics, some meat on the bones of the Aerotropolis concept?
Well, I think it's making a lot of progress. I think there are a lot of people working hard on it. I mean, this, we talked a lot about passenger service, but the airport is the economic engine, not only of this community, but really of the region. 2/3 of our, call it GCP, gross community product, all economic development, come from our airport. A lot of it driven by FedEx. 2/3 of the jobs. So we've got to get this right. It's a competitive advantage that our community has, but it's kind of been underutilized, underappreciated, and there's never really been a strategy for it. And so I think a lot of work's been done. I think some of the frustration from the council was there's some council members where the airport is in their district and those folks haven't been consulted. There was a neighborhood meeting, and I think that the council members, such as Councilman Collins, who's very integrated in his community, can help get the message right and take that plan to the neighbors. The thing that frustrated me was just there was no mention about jobs in that plan, and everything we need to be focused on in this community, especially around the airport, is about jobs. I was talking to someone from the chamber the other night, and they said, we're not just getting cut from corporate headquarters, we're not even in the hunt because of the air service. So I'm thankful of the leadership of Mr. Salmons. I can't imagine a better person to lead this airport from where we've been. We've had a lot of air service, we've been overserved from a community our size, and how we go through this transformation and continue to get more air service.
Charlie, let's bring you in. I mean, Councilman Conrad said, he didn't hear jobs mentioned with Aerotropolis. You're a planning consultant with Aerotropolis. What about jobs?
Well, I think that based on a lot of what the council said, they did include the jobs information in the presentation that was presented at Whitehaven High School last night, and in fact talked about that if this plan was accomplished based on what they were talking about, it would generate about 900 additional jobs per year over the 20-year period, and so that starts to add up pretty quickly to about 16,000 over the 20-year period. And I think that's a big part of the process. What we need to do, we've been losing some industries to DeSoto County, and a lot of it is because they've gone through the tax incentives here and are no longer eligible for them, so they move to where they can get additional tax incentives. Another part of it is available usable land, and that's something we're looking at too. It's kind of a comprehensive project to find places for additional industrial land, remove blight, and get other businesses interested in moving back to the area. So it's a comprehensive plan. Jobs are a big part of it, but stabilizing neighborhoods like the Whitehaven neighborhood and Hickory Hill neighborhood are a big part of it also.
Kemp, you wanted to comment.
No, I know, and that's great. And I think that there was a lot presented to the council, and I think after the comments, I think because that is the focus, and I think all the things that's in the plan, which is good, really builds up to how do we create more good-paying jobs for our community.
Right.
So how much have the readjustment, the reconfiguration of the airline industry, how much has that affected our Aerotropolis planning?
The airlines obviously impact the area and what happens at the airport. I think the big part of what the Aerotropolis is looking at is the business side of what businesses are located in there. Quite frankly, if we have more businesses in the Aerotropolis area, we will have more people using the airport. And that's the key. We have lost businesses. We need to engage and bring new businesses in that will then use the airport. One of the things that is really a growth industry and can't move out of the Memphis area are the things that FedEx says they need right at the end of the runway, and that's that same-day sort stuff, like the veterinarian facility that brings samples in that are pulled off early in the morning and sent back out on the plane the same day.
It does, and I don't know if it's a question for you. I'll put you on the spot with this. With FedEx, I mean, their quarterly earnings came out recently, way off, but that's part of the restructuring plan to some extent. And when the big plan with cutbacks and so on came out, 6 months ago, a lot of what they talked about is how they have growth area in ground, and they are declining in their air business. Does that concern you as head of the airport authority?
Well, there are dynamics in any business environment. FedEx is a well-managed company. I think any progressive company today, every 5 or 6 years or so, will prune the trees. And I was in Washington this week, and they're talking about the 3% sequester, and I'm like, if you can't find 3% to cut in this place, you've lost your mind. And corporate entities like FedEx have to do the same thing. It's important to note that FedEx pays 80% of the landing fees at the Memphis International Airport, which makes it very conducive for passenger flights to come in here because of the low cost. But what they tell us is that we look at your demographics. Do you have enough people who can sustain the high level of flights that you had when you were a Delta hub? And frankly, that's no. But it's good news for Osceola when they get a steel plant, because those folks are going to fly out of Memphis. What's good for North Mississippi will be good for Memphis. Certainly we need to do what we can, and Kemp's worked hard on this at the City Council to try to create an economic environment where companies will want to come to Memphis and grow. And it's a chicken and the egg. You know, you're not going to have flights until you have passengers, and you're not going to, the other way around.
One thing that in the middle of these cutbacks with Delta, ground was broken on, I may have my timing off slightly, but the ground transportation center, the big garage that people see, the rental cars are going in there. That has just recently opened, I believe. I haven't flown lately, so I haven't seen it in person. And there was some concern or even criticism that, hey, we've just built this big multi-million-dollar garage and we're losing all this service. Do the economics of that garage still work?
Well, the number of people that are flying out of Memphis has not decreased. And the people that we call O&D, they originate in Memphis, they still need to park their car somewhere. There are 3 primary areas of revenue for an airport: landing fees, terminal rent, and non-airline revenue, which is parking and concessions. It's a 3-leg stool. That's a huge piece of the profits that are made or the revenue that's made by an airport. $6 a day you can park in that in the parking garage, the ground transportation center as we call it. We also moved all the rental car companies from Democrat Road all the way to the airport now, so you don't have to get on a smelly bus and pollute the air and ride over to Democrat. What does that do? Creates hundreds of acres of potential expansion for FedEx in the future. Right now they're landlocked by Democrat Road. It's sometime a generation from now perhaps that road can close and FedEx can go all the way to the creek, which is a huge opportunity for this community. And FedEx, FedEx is planning for generations away, and we have to do the same, Charlie, in this community.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there for this topic at least. Jack Sammons, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time. Charlie Goforth, also thank you for being here. And when we come back, a conversation about pension and benefit reform and unfunded liabilities at the city and county level coming up next. We're joined now by Joe Sano from the watchdog group Memphis Shall Be Informed. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for inviting me.
And Kemp Conrad, you stayed around to talk about pensions and benefits and compensation and all those issues of local government. We'll try to talk about the city, the county, and MLGW. Those are some hot button issues for you, Joe. Let me ask a real simple question. Are the pension obligations just too much for the city to handle?
I think so at the present time. I mean, we're talking OPEB at $1.2 billion, and then we've got an unfunded liability on the pension plan of $640-something million. We're close to $2 billion, and the county has like $400 million, so 5 times the county with basically the same number of employees at the city has 1/5 of the obligation of the city.
Is that all pension money, or is that pension and healthcare benefits rolled together?
Well, that's the $2 billion is
Together.
yeah, and that's
OPEB
OPEB.
stands. OPEB is
Other post-employment benefits, basically health care for retirees.
okay. And Kemp, how you've been on the city council for however many years now, I mean, your take on this problem. Some people nationally have talked about how pensions are a ticking time bomb for state, local, county government.
The main feeling is frustration because the facts on this are so clear. What we're doing now is not good for our city, it's not good for the taxpayers, and frankly, it's not good for our employees and retirees who think that this pension plan and the health care plan is going to be there for them in the future. It's not under the present course. And people that want to do the responsible thing get attacked for trying to set this up so it makes it right by everybody. To put this into context, our annual budget's about $600 million, okay? So our unfunded liability, basically promises that have been made by past politicians and union bosses that can't be kept, is 3 times the size of our total annual budget. The last 3 years, we have underfunded the pension plan by more than $50 million, okay? So almost 10% of our entire budget. And it borders on criminal. And so we tried to make these reforms last year, which would have done a lot of this. One of the things, a minimum retirement age where you can't retire, you can't go to work at 20 and work for 25 years and retire at 45, putting a minimum retirement age. The administration caved, unfortunately, under the pressure of the unions. So those changes were only for new employees, not employees 10 years or less. Listen, I don't like going to employees that have been here 10 years and saying your plan's going to change, but I'm willing to do that if it's going to make the plan solvent in the future. This is a huge problem. The facts are clear, and it's unbelievable to me the absolute lack of leadership that we can't get this right.
And the change. So let's go back through some of the details there. The changes that were made is employees, new employees, they will have to work till what age?
I believe it's 60 for 55 for public service, or 52 and a half for public service, and maybe 55 or 60 for people that have desk jobs. It's something like that. Where before there was none. One thing we're working on right now, I'm going to introduce in the next 30 days, is eliminating double dipping. So you can't have someone that retires from the city of Memphis, gets a full pension, then goes to work for Shelby County or MLGW. So you have the same pool of taxpayers paying a full pension while someone's making, $100,000 plus a year. I think that perverts the spirit of the pension plan.
And
if I can say one other thing.
Yeah, please.
A long time ago, people in government did make less. Thus, healthcare and pensions, the benefits kind of made up. What happens now, if you look at the average salary or what an average city employee makes, it's much higher than what the average Memphian makes. So now you've got these rich benefit pools and people making more money. And we need to just really restructure it and get it right, and then we can focus on the other priorities of city government.
And what about, I guess I'll turn to you to get you in here. What about the people who say, look, you're talking about city governments as if there are these, sort of bureaucrats in a dark room in a basement somewhere, the filing cabinet, the sort of evil bureaucrat. And maybe they exist. But what about the police officers, the firefighters, EMTs, first responders? I mean, if we weren't able to get some other opposing views here, but let me play that role for a second. Those people put their life on the line for the city of Memphis. They save people. They do this for a whole, life. Don't they deserve if not rich, but at least good pension and retirement plan?
Absolutely. I mean, we need the firemen and we need the police. But what you're seeing, of course, overall in other cities like Detroit, Chicago, and things, the overall pensions are eating into everything else, street maintenance, all kinds of things that because of the pensions and the exorbitant pensions in many cases, I don't think Memphis is that way, but the exorbitant pensions in these cities are eating the budget out everywhere else. And of course, the last thing they cut is the police and firemen. But even that, like in Detroit, they're cutting that.
Can I say, your question is right on. That's absolutely why I'm so passionate about this, is we owe it, especially to first responders and the police and the firefighters who are putting their lives on the line, who have a very hard job. We owe it to them to be honest with them. And make this right for them and their families long term. The way we're doing it now, it's unsolvent. We'd have to increase taxes just to meet our pension annual required contribution. we'd have to increase taxes 50 cents to do that. If we did that, we'd really have flight out of here.
Right.
And that doesn't even cover the other structural gap in city government, which is about $20 to $30 million, where current expenses outpace current revenues.
Right.
And the really frustrating thing is we've been here now with this mayor and this council 4 years. We own this, and it's frustrating that we cannot get it right.
Bill.
How much has the change in accounting for those liabilities and those liabilities being on the books and having to have some level of funding for it, how much has it intensified, do you think, the questions about reforming pensions, reforming OPEB, reforming these benefit packages? Kemp?
Well, I think it has, but I think all it did is it made government have to play by the same rules as everybody else, saying if you're going to accrue these liabilities, you have to account for it and be honest and transparent about it, so people that are buying your bonds, that are investing in your city, so to speak, understand, what kind of balance sheet you have. And so, and I think the financial collapse of 2008 kind of laid all this to it made it all very real, and it really exposed how fragile this system is.
So, Joe, how much of this then, in your view, is saying, well, realistically, we think this many people will retire, will need these benefits, as opposed to here's the hard number we have to meet? Because some people aren't meeting what the obligations are. They're providing some of it.
Well, this you have to contrast. I mean, I don't know all the answers, but you have to contrast the city and the county. How did the city get 5 times as expensive as the county? That goes back a number of years. The January 2001 pension resolution at the city that allowed elected and appointed officials to retire after 12 years. We're talking hundreds of people that added to. Then you've got the line of duty disability at the city, which is 10 times as high as the county and the light, gas, and water. That needs to be reformed. So that's 2 obvious answers of why you've got more expense at the city than the county. But somebody needs to come in, and I don't know all the answers, but somebody like Jim Martin, who's retired from the county, who's an expert on pensions, you need to get somebody like that to come in and say, why is the city 5 times as expensive as the county? And it goes back into history, it goes back into OPEB. For instance, January 2007, the county stopped letting retirees who were receiving Social Security to be on the health care system. So a lot of these things, the county made the right decision, the city didn't.
And you had some numbers here that you pulled from the city and the county, Joe, that are on your website. But the number of retired people as of summer of last year in the city of Memphis, 4,900 for the city. Shelby County, 3,400. Just so people think, well, the city's much bigger, and they're comparable number of retirees, but the benefits are just that much richer or higher or farther unfunded.
They're comparable number of active employees.
Yeah.
But the retirees are much less at the county, less in number, and also less average pensions.
Right. Go ahead, Bill.
Kemp, when the city council gets into budget season here in less than a month, how much of the discussion is going to be meeting the obligation you have to meet and meeting what you think you have to meet of the obligation, or can realistically or politically do?
I think it's going to be a lot of it. I mean, this is one of the bigger issues. I think the challenge is, this issue really outlasts the kind of average politician's shelf life. This is a generational issue. It took a long time to dig this hole. And, most politicians are focused on the short term. They're focused on the next project, what they're going to do for their district, how they're going to get reelected. And this is something that, it's a tough issue. It's about people's retirements. But we've got to get it right, because we're digging the hole deeper and deeper. So I think it'll be a big part of it. And the real issue is there are some very common sense, sensible reforms. They're not draconian. They were proposed last year, and most of them were stripped out. It was watered down. So guess what? We're right back in the same situation. And we're going to continue to be until we fix the problem once and for all and meet the obligations to our taxpayers and to the folks that are relying on these in the future.
Can the city council or should the city council try to restore the 4.6% pay cut that city employees took?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we absolutely have to do that. I also think we have to, for once and for all, restructure and reform city government so those employees can have some real wage growth into the future. But it's hard to do that when we have all these legacy issues that we fail to address. One of them is trash collection. We learned again Tuesday, we got an update on this. We can save from $12 to $20+ million a year recurring. Our employees can make more money than they do now, and they can ride in automatic trucks. And we're still, nothing's happened on that. That's the administration's job to work that out and bring us a plan. The council put a plan together, they didn't implement it. So it's these kinds of problems where the business of city government is not focused on enough by the Wharton administration. They're focused on this pie in the sky, all this plan. The business of city government is still broken. It's easily fixable, but we got to have some leadership to do it. And I think we could get a supermajority of the council to come together, and then we could move this city forward over the next generation. But if we don't, we're going to end up like Detroit. And if you look at what's going on there, it's not pretty. They just appointed a receiver. People are going to lose their pensions. Look at Stockton, California. In Detroit, they're basically closing down blocks of the city because they can't provide services. That is where we're going to be in a generation if we don't deal with the issue right now.
And you've talked before on the show about really, and other city council folks talked about wanting to lower the tax rate in the city of Memphis, that to make it more competitive, so it's more competitive. So you've got those two tensions.
Well, you do. Hey, listen, if we could just keep our tax rate flat,